All right, let's do this. I've been asked by a couple of my subs to talk about Brexit, give my opinion on Brexit. Um, and I'm going to put this on both my channels. I know in my MGTOW channel that I get a lot of backlash from this, but what the hell? I'm going to do it anyway. As you guys know, my channel is not the normal channel. I don't lean toward the left or the right. I am more a pragmatic analyst, have been for the last 20 years. That's the way I was trained to be more pragmatic. I was trained basically to look at things from the top down rather than the bottom up. So that's why my perspective is a little different. Now, let's talk about Brexit. Anybody that's been following the EU as long as I have, and the Euro and the Economic Union, uh, I've been following since I would say 1992, 1994. I would say that's when I've been following the EU, and before that, in the 80s, with the when they were negotiating the Maastricht Treaty about reforming the economic Commonwealth, which the EU used to be called for the previous 20 years in its iteration. Actually, the EU in different forms has been around since 1951, and they've steadily expanded its range and its scope to what you see now. It's the grand European experiment underneath Pax Americana. Basically, after the World War II ended, and that the last bloody war with the United States troops actually standing guard and making sure that, number one, the Russians didn't come get revenge on the Germans, and number two, the three great powers didn't get together and start killing each other again, because nobody wanted a third world war starting in Europe. That being said, anybody that's been following this stuff as long as I have could have predicted that the Brexit referendum was going to go the way of leave for a bunch of different reasons. And we will enumerate them right here. And briefly, we don't go into too deep of detail because, like I said, this is not a political channel. Neither one of them are. There's a lot because of the European Union and the complexities therein. There's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of history that you have to go into to understand the moving parts. And this is YouTube. And I have no desire to go through all of that paperwork, finding the articles, putting them, analyzing them, putting them up, and then making them digestible for people that don't follow this stuff. In real life, me and my partner have a, how can I say, we have an outside public face that has been doing this kind of stuff for the past almost 14 years now. And the people that have followed us for the last 13, 14 years, they are acquainted with our style and how we analyze. And to those people on that outside that have followed us, Brexit is no surprise. One, because if you understand pivots under Mackinder, if you go back and read Mackinder's analysis and plan in 1904, you'd understand the way British politics actually works. European politics for the last since basically the 13th century, basically it's a three-legged stool. It is the British Isles versus the French Gauls versus the German tribes. Those three-legged stools, and how the balance of power between those three entities control Europe, right? Okay, they've been at each other's throats for what 800-900 years, fighting each other. So this particular thing is nothing through. The British have never seen themselves as European for the most part. I mean, they're quasi Europeans. So the Brits wanting into the EU or the economic Commonwealth back in 1975, it's a marriage of convenience. As long as the UK or the Brits can get something out of their relationship with the continent of Europe, or the continent of Europe and their union, they're all in. In fact, they lobbied to get in. Basically, Germany was too weak to keep them out, and de Gaulle did not want them in. And they had to wait till Charles de Gaulle died before they were allowed into the economic Commonwealth. Because basically, Charles de Gaulle did not trust Great Britain. They don't, they don't trust the British and British banks and British politics, because Britain has a funny way of seeing what's good for Britain first. I don't have any problem with that, but that's who they are as a people, and that's what they do. So as long as there's so long as they were getting benefits from being in the economic union, the European Union, they had no problems with it. In fact, they trumpeted it. In fact, they basically upheld it. They they embraced the euro, even though as it goes with the British, they never let go of their currency. They still use the pound. They always have. They probably always will. They never accepted the euro as the currency de jure of Great Britain. What does that tell you? They were never really in the EU to begin with. It was a marriage of convenience. And as soon as the European banking system started to waver, as it has after 2000, the shocks of 2007, 2008, and with Greece actually starting to take a nosedive, that's basically when the exit signs for getting out of the EU started to gain steam. A lot of people want to blame it on integration. Integration has something to do with it, but that basically the the Brits see the EU as a sinking ship or something going over the cliff, and basically they want out. This is the elite. They want out. They want an out card. With the Libyan and the Syrian wars that the French and the British actually started. Okay, this is something that they actually started, and the blowback that the rest of Europe has to deal with, as far as refugees coming over the borders because of the countries being blown up. The rest of Europe has to deal with that stuff. But all of a sudden, when the UK can't control the immigrants, the flow of immigrants, or sharing the flow of immigrants coming into the union, they want to abandon ship. They want to jump over the rails. And I'm not saying that a lot of what they're saying about giving up sovereignty and lessening their democratic positioning or hold to a supranational body that can enforce laws, trade laws, and whatnot is not a concern. It is, but it wasn't a concern when you joined back in the 90s. Nobody talked about that. Well, the EU is gaining more and more power. As long as it was an advantage to the Brits, it was okay. When they were doing it to Greece, it was okay in on the behest of British banks. I did not see one Brit go down and basically rally or protest for Greece when it was being strong armed by German banks and the EU. We have forgotten who the British are. Okay, we think of them as fair play and a force for good. That is, like any other entity or human entity, there is a good side and there is a bad side. We don't think about the British ships going up the Yangtze River and strong arming the Chinese, or colonizing Africa, or passing out smallpox blankets to Indian tribes. We don't think of the Brits that way. That being said, that is the ugly side of Britain, of British. Brexit is just a symptom of what's going to happen to the European Union, or the European experiment. European experiment since World War II. Can Europe come together and coexist without killing each other? The collapse, or what I predict the eventual collapse of the European Union, is probably going to wreak havoc on the banking system. It's probably going to wreak havoc on the political system. There was going to be exit out of the European Union by one of these countries. The Brits just happened to beat them to it. Even though this is just the first step, the referendum is just an indicator. Parliament still has to vote this stuff in, and then they have to invoke Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty to actually get out, and that's a 2-year process. And then they have to negotiate their way out of the European Union. If not, guess what? After 2 years, they will remain. They will revert back to being in the European Union, and they will have to do this all again. Fortunately for the Brits, Germany wants them out. Germany wants them out. This wishy-washy British relationship with the European Union and the continent, Germany wants them out. France probably secretly wants them out because UK is more of a disruption than anything else. So what probably will happen after the German elections, because there's basically everything's going to be on hold until the French and the German elections. And depending on what happens in those two elections, that will determine one, whether the UK actually separates from the EU, and two, under what conditions the UK separates from the EU. This is just a one small step in the direction of a divorce. Okay, this is just basically the wife announcing that she wants a divorce. Now the parliament has to actually go file for the divorce, and then the divorce proceedings will proceed. But honestly, when I first heard about Brexit and I knew there was going to be a vote, I already knew that the Brits would vote to leave. That's who they are. That's what they are. Now the problem that they're going to have is with the Irish and the Scots, because once you push that domino over, you're going to start a cascade. And right now, and we're gonna since I got a few minutes, and this is for my subs, especially my IBMOR subs that aren't really up on this, don't particularly follow this, and this is not their field of expertise. Really, to be honest with you, most of the MGTOW folks that think they know what they're talking about, actually they really don't. The biggest worry about the EU is not the Brits. The biggest problem with the EU is with the pig states, basically the southern states, with Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Greece, and Spain. The pig states. Them exiting, or them wanting to exit, will take the southern EU out, forcing France to probably leave, which will ultimately force, and get this, you're not going to hear this anyplace else, trust and believe, forcing the Northern Europeans or the Germanic states to actually form their own union. And eventually link up with who? With the Russians. Why do I say that? The leader of the German tribes for the last 250 years has been Prussia. Prussians and White Russians, who used to be the ruling class or the ruling oligarchy in old Russia before the Soviet Union, are cousins. Even though they fought each other, they're still cousins. The reunification of Germany, where you put the Prussian state back with the German state, allowing Prussian the Prussian royalty, the Prussian leadership to take hold of Germany again. And with the ascension of the fall of the Soviet Union and the ascension of the White Russians, especially under Putin, now you're going to have a marriage of which the UK, the Brits, and the France have been trying to prevent for the last 300 years. You're going to have a closer and closer alliance between the German tribes of the northern German states and Russia. The UK leaving the European Union will cause the Spain, Italy, and Greece, and possibly even France to leave the EU. That would leave the northern German states free to go wherever they want. With the decline of NATO and the loss of U.S. military power that has been eroding over the past, I would say, 30 years, the U.S. will no longer be able to stop them. So you're going to get this very, very large scale realignment of Europe. Because once the Northern Europeans go, which is the German states, Eastern Europe, which is the buffer fringe between Russia and Germany, will actually go along with it. So you're going to have basically 3/4 of Europe basically aligning with Russia. And with them aligning with Russia, that means they will align with the BRIC countries. So if 3/4 of Europe goes with the BRIC countries, guess what's going to happen to the so-called Middle East or Western Asia? They automatically will fall to the BRICS. Africa is basically under BRIC controlled already, as is Latin America. So you're going to have, so basically the breakup of the EU, which is something that I would say is inevitable. It's inevitable. It was tenuous to begin with, a tenuous experiment to begin with. I thought the Syrian war was a mistake because that was going to cause a cascade problem exactly as I thought it would. With the flood of Western Asian and African immigrants into the UK uncontrolled is going to cause a backlash, which blow back amongst the white populace. And I don't blame them. I can't say I blame them. That culture shock bringing in all these immigrants all at once. But it is what it is. Instead of letting this stuff play out or evolve over the 50 years it was supposed to evolve in, what they're basically doing is basically accelerating the process. You're patching holes in the dam, and what you're doing is eroding the wall. So you're accelerating the process that was already in place, that was already going to take place. So Brexit, or the UK leaving the EU, was just a step. As a matter of fact, they haven't officially left the EU. It was just a referendum. Like I say, Parliament has to vote, and then it has to be a negotiation, which I do think they will accelerate their process, and I do think the Brits will leave. I think it's a mutual agreement between the continent and the rest of Europe. Now all the paperwork has to be divided as far as banking and money and investments and stuff like that, because the EU is intertwined financially as well as physically, because you got a lot of Brits that live on the continent, and a lot of Eastern Europeans and other people holding passports from elsewhere in the UK working, which as long as they were working and helping out the UK, they were fine. As soon as there's an economic glitch, now they want them out, but that's neither here nor there. I didn't want this to be too long because I think I'm probably in the 25-minute range. After I edit it down a little bit, it'd probably be about 20 minutes, but that's what I think about Brexit. If anybody watching this could have told you that Brexit was going to pass as a referendum, now it's about the bankers and the business people actually coming down and doing business and settling the divorce resolution, and that this is just the first step in basically breaking up a crumbling entity they call the European Union. With that, I'll leave it there. I might revisit this maybe sometime in the next week or two to give you further thoughts. Since it just happened, I'm actually going, listening and reading and going through other stuff to actually start gathering the crumbs, breadcrumbs, so we can make a whole loaf and I can make this digestible. But I'm going to leave you with that. I hope this answers some questions and maybe spark some more questions and thoughts that you guys can do further research on. But